Thanks to MetaHumans and Unreal Engine, it's easier than ever to make really great professional-looking CG content. Unreal Engine as a platform is so useful in its ability to bring together different types of motion capture and performance data and apply it in real time or in post-render to really great-looking CG assets. But what if I told you that you don't need a big expensive motion capture studio just to create some data to apply to your characters and your metahumans in Unreal Engine? Hi, I'm James Rowan, and today I'm going to show you a quick and easy pipeline to get body and facial animation onto your metahumans, and all you need is a way to record audio and a cell phone. So, let's check it out. Now, today's tutorial is going to be going at about an intermediate level, and a little bit of an advance. If you haven't spent some time in Unreal already, I highly recommend you go check out the Epic Games Your First Hour in Unreal tutorial. Then you should spend a little bit of time learning about Sequencer, and finally make sure that you spend a little bit of time checking out the primers about metahumans, specifically in 5.6 or later. If you can handle those things, then you should be able to follow along. So we're going to need three things to make this happen. A metahuman, we're going to need a 2D recorded video that we're going to use AI tools to turn into 3D animation data, and then we need an audio file. And then we're going to use the built-in Unreal Engine MetaHuman Performance tool to turn that audio file into facial performance data. So let's jump into Unreal, get that metahuman, and get at the other resources we need. We're going to work in Unreal 5.6 today because it's nice and stable and it works really well with some of the new stuff they brought in for metahumans. Now, you may have used metahumans in the last year, but there was a big change in the last 12 months by bringing MetaHuman Creator out of the online tool and into the engine. So now we use all of our Unreal stuff straight from inside. But there's a catch here. There's a couple settings we got to make sure we take care of. And one of them is making sure that our options include the MetaHuman Creator Core data. So when you're opening up your work, make sure that's checked on. You only have to do it once, but if you don't, you won't be able to use metahumans. Let's open up a project in 5.6, just start from there, and then we'll start getting the pieces together. And I'm just going to work out of a blank template. We'll call this MetaHuman Performance. Let's call that MetaHuman Performance. All right, first thing we're going to do is make sure that our MetaHuman plugins are turned on. Otherwise, we're going to hit a wall pretty fast. And there's 5 plugins we got to turn on here. And then hit restart. All right, after that, let's bring in a metahuman. If you've never worked with metahumans before, you can get one off Quixel Bridge. That's one of their pre-baked examples, and that's a good place to start. So if you're in Bridge, you click on metahumans, you see these presets. You can pick any of them, click on them, download, and then add to the project. It'll take a little bit to download. They're pretty big packages, but once it's there, it keeps it in your library, and you hit add, import, and then you might get one of these missing settings. Make sure you enable any of those missing settings. Those are going to be required for rendering the various parts of MetaHuman. Anything else that comes along, feel free to import, and then we're going to have to do another restart. Now if we look in our project, we have our MetaHumans folder, and there's Aoi. And this would be his blueprint. Now I'm not going to use this canned MetaHuman. I'm actually going to use a custom MetaHuman that made myself. And so if you had something that you want to use otherwise, feel free to import it in. But otherwise, you should be set and ready to go with whomever you've downloaded. So to give me a second, I'm going to grab mine. And I've just got it in a different project. There are a lot of really great MetaHuman tutorials out there right now. So if you're looking to learn more about MetaHumans, how to make your own MetaHuman, how to do mesh to MetaHuman to get a really good version of your digital version of yourself, just check out YouTube. There's a lot of great materials. And make sure you're looking at 5.6 because MetaHuman Creator is now part of Unreal Engine as opposed to previously when it was an online tool. All right, and here's my MetaHuman, looking pretty good. As with any really complicated asset, make sure when you're trying to move it from project to project, don't try and just grab what you need and pull it in Windows Explorer. Go to Asset Actions, do a migration. There are a lot of dependencies required to power an asset like a MetaHuman, so this is the only way you're going to be sure you're going to get all of them. So right-click again, Asset Actions, Migrate, and that gives you this asset report. It tells you everything you need to recreate this asset exactly how it is. So you hit OK, and then you choose the project that you want to move it to. There's our MetaHuman Performance into the Content folder. I'm going to overwrite this because that's just the default. They should be the same. Yes to all. You won't have that because you're only going to have the one MetaHuman you got. It's a slow one. All right, now if I just look quickly over here in this project, I should have my MetaHumans, James, looking good. All right, so I can close that other project. And if I drag him into my world, I've got my MetaHuman. So bring your MetaHuman into your level. and let's talk about what we need. All right, so we're going to animate two different parts of our MetaHuman, body and face, because that's how MetaHumans are built. If you click on your MetaHuman and look at it in your outliner, you see their complex component structure, body, face, all of these other pieces, the grooms, sitting on those skeletal mesh. So in order to animate a MetaHuman, you need to create data for both the body and the face. And we're going to use two different ways to do that, just so that we have an opportunity to show off a couple different technologies. Now there's a bunch of different ways that you can animate and create performance capture data. Like I said before, there's some really expensive equipment out there that you see in the professional grade. Today we're looking at stuff that you can use functionally for free, just using stuff you already own. So first things first, body. And to do body, we're going to be using the Quick Magic online tool. Quick Magic takes 2D video, turns it into a 3D skeletal mocap or animation data, as you see right there in these really quick videos. So if you go to Quick Magic, you can get a free demo, and that's why I'm using it for this tool. You get 30 seconds, and it's enough to establish to give this a try. So what you need to do is you create a video, and I used my phone. I set it up on a tripod, and then I recorded myself walking and talking towards the camera. So a couple tips just about how to take a good video for motion capture. In this type of capture, you're going to want to convert it into an MP4 before you take it on to Quick Magic. If you get an MOV straight off of your phone, the platform doesn't like it, and it will often do a conversion for you, but I've had mixed results with that. If you're not familiar with how to make a conversion, check it out on YouTube. I use Adobe Media Encoder. It's very reliable. The platform's essentially looking for an H.264 encode. So let's just look at this video for a second. Now, since we are doing single camera capture of a video, you want to make sure your entire body is always in frame. If you get too close and your hand leaves frame, the system's not going to have any way to build data off that. And so you're going to have really funky stuff in your animation that you'd have to clean up later. And that's a really laborious process. So now right there, I put my hands in my pockets. And that is a really difficult thing to do. If you wanted to do something like that, it's going to be hard to animate. So be aware of that. Things like hands in pockets, crossing arms, touching yourself, those are challenges in Mocap. But we'll talk about control rig and how you can necessarily make some changes to make that a little bit better. Now another trick and technique I used up here is right off the top, I did a little clap. Okay? And that's an old school synchronization activity. Because remember, when we bring in different sources of data, i.e. the video for body and sound for face, there's no way to sync those things up unless we create a sync point. And that's what a clap is. It's something visual as well as audio that we can put together so that in Unreal we can have the facial animation and body animation, and then also the recorded audio happening at the same time. So I highly recommend that you do your recording, do a clap off the top, take a take, stay in frame, and just for fun, I walk off frame so that we can see what happens to the skeleton there. So once you've got your video, get back to Quick Magic, you import your video. It's a pretty simple system to use. I'm going to go through it really quick. There are great tutorials online specifically about this tool. Or if you want to use one of the other tools like Rococo Studio, or say you've got a studio that's working on things like Move AI or Capture, then you've got great solutions. This is awesome because it's free and something to try out. So it detects the motion. What we want to do is choose our output format. So we're going to drag in Unreal 5.5. Put that on top there, and we're going to also go, before we would do that, you would actually probably want to take a look at your timeline and make sure you don't include anything unnecessary. So I'm going to include the clap, and I'm going to shorten that up, and I think I might finish. Yeah, don't need to have all these extra clips or all these extra frames here, just because these things do cost credits, and so you want, even though they're free, for example, you don't want to waste them. So once you have that clip in where you need your usable data, you've dragged in the output format you're going to use, you hit next, full body, hands. We didn't do any fancy poses, so often you start mocap with a T pose or an A pose. I didn't do that for this, just to show that this is not a huge requirement in this workflow. Like I said, it's quick and simple. And then boom, generate now. And when you're done, usually takes 5-10 minutes, you'll end up with a Quick Magic project file that shows you the animation alongside the real live video. And this is great. It's not perfect, obviously, but this gets you like 98% of the way there pretty quickly, and that's really valuable. Now, immediately I do some things that you should never do when you're doing mocap. Things like putting your hands in your pockets. Like, those are big challenges. If you're going to animate that type of thing, you really got to know what you're doing and plan ahead. As you see right here, every time I put my hands in my pockets, the model goes right through its own legs. There's no such thing as soft tissue detection, right? But there is some new retargeting tools in Unreal 5.7.7 that you should check out if that's something you want to learn more about. But that's outside the scope of this. Right now, we've got our file. We hit download. And then once we've downloaded that, we get an FBX file. We get PNGs, textures for Quinn. So literally, it gives you everything you need to get exactly that model moving just like it did. All we really need is the FBX. But the rest of it can come along for the ride. So we've got that file. It's great. Let's bring it into Unreal. I'm going to keep good Unreal convention, and I'm going to create a folder for my animation called animation. Let's double click in there, and let's do an import. Grab that FBX. And just for ease of use, just leave everything as default. Hit import. You may get a couple messages down here. Generally, you can just say yes and okay. We had some issues on this import, so let's just check out, see what it says. No smoothing group information was found. That's okay. We won't need smoothing information for animation data. So that looks probably like it's good. So we've got our files here. Let's do a save all. If we double click into our animation, this is it. It's Unreal. It's looking great. So let's put that on our MetaHuman. And the first way you could check that is you could click on the body, and you could go down here and say, I want to animate my MetaHuman, the body, using an animation asset, and then click on the anims and notice that there aren't any. And that's because even though we chose the Unreal 5.5 skeleton, the MetaHuman skeleton is slightly different. So we're going to have to do a retarget. Now, the good news is that retargeting in Unreal has gotten way better over the last number of years, and this process is going to be painless. So you go to your animation sequence and right-click. We go to Retarget Animations. This interface, it's pretty simple. Here's our source mesh. We tell it where we want it to go. Now, I know clicking on my MetaHuman, so I can just pull that over there, it is a trick right here that this is my skeleton mesh. These are my clothes, right? I actually want to retarget to the body, right? And the body is the SKM James MetaHuman body mesh. So when I've got my retarget window open, I have to look for that skeleton mesh. Nope, that wasn't it either. Where is it? There it is, SKM James body. And it's important that you retarget to the mesh of the body for the MetaHuman, because that is going to be the skeletal component that we're going to animate. So while you could pick one of the other things, it won't help you in our next step when we bring it into sequencer and actually try to animate the body. So we have our source, we have our target, we have the animation we want to use. We only have one animation in this file, but say you downloaded a pack, you might have a whole bunch. So you can do more than one at the same time. Or in this case, we're just going to do our one, and we click on Export Animations. If you click off by accident, you'll get this, we're ready to export, but the export button is grayed out. It's because you got to make sure you actually choose which anim asset you want to retarget. I usually give it a prefix of just retarget so it's easy to find. And now inside of our content folder, we've got this asset. Let's just put it back into animation. We always want to be organized. And in our content browser, there we have our retarget. All right, let's do a save. And now if I go to my body and I try to pick an animation asset, it's there, okay? And that's like the first frame. So we know it's working, that's a good sign. But that's not how we want to actually do this animation. We actually want to use a sequence so that we can be bringing in the different components and make a cinematic. So let's create a new folder. This is for our sequence or sequences. And if we right click there, we're going to go to level sequence, LS, and let's call this MetaHuman Performance. Save that sequence. And there's lots of ways to bring your MetaHuman in, but I like to actually click on the asset I want to bring into my sequence, and then you can add that actor track right here. I find that's quickest and most reliable, better than digging around in your content browser. Now, we bring into our sequencer our MetaHumans there. Immediately we have two control rigs, one for body, one for face. We have to delete both of those because they're just going to get in the way. You can delete them later, but we'll do it right off the top. And so now if you go to your body and hit the plus, let's look for our animation. Our retargeted animation is there. Nothing would be there if there wasn't anything that would work for this skeleton. And when we click on it, it's added to our timeline. And there we go, our animation is playing back. It's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. His neck's a little funny. And you might also notice that the clip didn't play all the way out. So I know this is a much longer sequence, so I'm just gonna open up my my in and outs here. It plays it out. Okay. Now, you might notice that it's a little weird. Like it seems to be that the character is looking up more than we want, and I don't know if maybe that's how I was acting, or maybe that's just how the 2D data was interpreted into 3D. That is one of the shortcomings of this type of motion capture. I only had the one angle straight on, so it might be difficult to tell the difference of that from 2D to 3D. If you use another tool, sometimes you'll have two cameras. You can have straight on camera and then at 190 degrees, and that will help some of that and make it better. But again, like I said, this gets us 95% of the way there. Now, if we want to make changes to that, we can bake down our animation to a control rig and then add keyframes. So let's go over that real quick. So back to the top, I'm going to bake down this animation. And this is kind of tricky because you got to click in the right place. In the body skeleton of your MetaHuman, if you right click, you have this option to bake to control rig. If you click on the animation, it's not there. If you right click on the blueprint for your MetaHuman, it's not there. It's got to be on the skeleton that you're trying to bake down. The other challenge is if you leave it by default, you only see the FK control rig. Turn off filter by asset, and then you can actually turn on your MetaHuman control rig. Defaults are fine, create. And what baking down to a control rig does is essentially it turns all this animation data into keyframeable information. And if you wonder what keyframes are, keyframes, these little dots, represent points in space. And so at any keyframe, you can change a point in space, and Unreal will fill in the gaps between that and the other keyframe. So we could just change locations and infinitely change them. But the cool thing we can do is we can add another transform to make an adjustment. So like I'm going to adjust the neck. I don't want the neck to stay here the whole time. I just think maybe the whole neck needs to be shifted just a little bit throughout the whole sequence. So I'm going to add an additive track. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Let's go to the side here. Let's find a place where his neck's turned up a little. Right there, okay. So let's say like right here, I'm going to click on my MetaHuman's head and just tilt it down a little. Oh, I'm going to turn snap off. I'm going to tilt it down a little bit there. There we go, okay? So let's assume that's forward. And I'm going to create a keyframe right there. Now since it's additive, that change gets added throughout the rest of the sequence, okay? And so we can see right there, it's put in, and then he's much better here. Now, my walk's a little funny, and I think that's probably just a limitation of the camera angle. But we could experiment when doing recording. Maybe I could have my camera a little higher. Maybe I could even do my camera off center a little bit. Try different things out and see what gives you the best results. But it's not bad. Okay. All right, so I've got my MetaHuman, I've got my body tracking. Let's get the facial performance in there. Like I said, we're going to use a different method for that than we had previously. This happens in MetaHuman. Don't worry about it. Sometimes it just happens. It's only a problem if it keeps happening. So we're going to use an audio file, and we're going to use what's called MetaHuman Performance to generate animation, facial animation data. So let's create a new folder for audio. And inside that audio folder, we're going to import that WAV file. Now, there's lots of different ways you could get your WAV file. You could take the video right off of your phone, and you could just strip off the audio to in a program like Adobe Premiere or Adobe Express. You could just record audio straight into your phone or on a microphone on your computer. I have one of these little wireless Go microphones, and so this recorded while I was talking, and so I was just able to pull the file right off this and get just the clean file. But the important thing is it has to be a .wav file, no MP3s, because the quality and the lack of compression is required for the AI to do the analysis properly. That's a bunch of information, doesn't matter. The important thing is it has to be a WAV file. So if you have an MP3, you can do a conversion, find a tool online to do that, or you can do that in Media Encoder. But as long as you have a WAV file, you'll be laughing. So import that in. Now we're going to right-click in this area, and under MetaHuman, we're going to go down to a MetaHuman Performance, and we're going to create a new MetaHuman Performance file. And we can just call this MetaHuman Performance. Let's just call this audio. So we're doing a performance based on the audio. And if you double-click into that, we get our nice window here. Up on the top right, we're going to start, and we choose our data type. Ours is going to be audio-based. So you could also use this tool if you're using a webcam to power your motion capture. That's what we have in monocular footage. But we're going to do audio, and then we're going to pick our audio file. And I think I called it Circle Take. There it is. So just make sure you know what it's called. And down here, then, we can check. And that's my clap, right, I mentioned before. So it's there, looks pretty good. And then we're going to choose what our visualization mesh is. Now, this is not the mesh you need to choose in the end, per se, but it's useful if you choose the actual mesh you're working with so you know what it's going to look like. So I'm going to choose my face. Audio clock, we're going to switch the audio clock source. Just agree with this because you're just going to have a better result. And here's my MetaHuman, who oddly enough looks much more like me further away, but when we get close, we lose some shadow data. But that's all you need just to do it. And if you hit process, it'll automatically take care of it and will give us something. So let's just see the first thing we get out here. And I did this on purpose because you see, you get this head rocking thing going on if you don't change any of the defaults, right? And so we have some performance here.
And there you have a quick and simple workflow for creating full body and facial animation for MetaHumans in Unreal Engine.
Okay. But the reason we have the head movement around is because of this right here. The head movement mode set to transform track. Okay? And that uses the transform track to move the skeleton mesh based on its pivot bone, the root bone. Okay? Now that might be useful for you given your animation type, but it's not what we want to do. A lot of people also go to control rig, but often what that will give you is a MetaHuman where the head shifts back or to the side. We already have head animation. We captured it during the video. So we don't want either of those things. In fact, we want to disable head movement. All we want is face. Otherwise, we're functionally building in two sets of head motion. So something's going to be off and something's going to be broken. So if you already have full body and you're just adding facial animation, make sure you disable the head movement. Okay? Now we can start our frames differently here. I like to, since we know we're eventually going to be syncing up the clap, I want to start this on the clap. And it happens to be frame 200, so we're going to start on frame 200. Okay? And when I hit process, then we'll get that video. Now the cool thing is that there are a couple other features built right into our advanced, nope, sorry, not our advanced, our overrides. And we can actually change the mood of our MetaHuman, and we can add some mood on top of what's going on there. So right now, this is just sort of neutral. If I change that to happy and hit process again, you see, I get a happier version. And it's a little campy. You know, you can pull down the mood, you can tweak it a little bit to see what goes best.
A quick and simple workflow for creating full body and facial animations for MetaHumans in Unreal Engine.
But it's great. I'm going to go with that. That's super. Process it. Now we're going to export the animation. Let's put it in our animation folder. And we can probably call this is animation sequence. So this is facial on the audio. So let's save that. Again, we're going to just create by defaults. Successful. Awesome. Let's do a save all. Get back into our sequence. And just like we did for body, we're going to go to face, hit plus. We're going to add an animation track. Look for our MetaHuman Performance facial audio. And that should add something in here. And yeah, I use the smile because it's very easy to tell that that has happened, right? Okay, so now I just dropped it in place, right? That's not necessarily the right place. What we should be doing is making sure we sync up. And so our body animation includes the clap, right? That clap right there, boom, that's where this clip starts because I set that to frame 200. Right? So I'm going to line those two things up together as best I can. Right? And now, this should approximate the walk and talk. But what are we missing? We're actually missing the sound. So let's line back up to that beginning again, and let's add an audio track. Same sort of thing, find our audio track. I called this circle take because it was the best take I did. And we can see right here that clap is that big spike. That's why we do a big sound like those clacker boards or a big clap, because I can visually look at this, line that up with my playhead. Okay? And now we hit play. I missed a little. We'll zoom in. Right there, let's say. So pull that back a bit. We'll pull that back a little bit too. So it claps and he starts to smile.
And there you have it. A quick and simple workflow for creating full body and facial animations for MetaHumans in Unreal Engine. I hope you...
And that's it. So quick and easy. We took animation data, we took, and that's it. Quick and easy. Body animation, facial animation, both powered by AI tools that you can access for free or very little money. And now you have a fully animated MetaHuman. Throw that into a movie render queue, pump out some nice graphics, and you could have something that looks really good really quickly. Now there may be some stuff in the face that you want to change a little bit, and just like the body, you can bake down your face to a control board. So instead of the control rig, what we want to do is click on face, and you want to bake down, turn off that filter, and we're going to look for our face control board. So that's going to do the same process. It's going to turn that entire animation into a keyframeable control board. And you're going to be able to add additives that would allow you to make changes onto that facial board. If you've never seen the face board, control board, that's what this is. So you could throw up the eyebrows, close the eyes, add some blinks, whatever you want to do to make that performance just look that much better. And there you have it, a quick and simple workflow for creating full body and facial animation for MetaHumans in Unreal Engine. I hope you found this tutorial useful. And while this is a pretty simple setup, I think it illustrates pretty quickly just how much creative potential you have when you work in Unreal Engine. There are lots of different capture and performance capture tools and techniques out there. So if you had a good time with this one, I hope it inspires you to go out to explore, to keep growing and learning in your animation and your virtual production skill set. That's all for me for this time. Thanks for watching.